Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in or either watching the replay on this. We are glad to be here today. My name is Kamara Seals, and I am the Policy Director here at the Arkansas Public Policy Panel. Uh, and I have with me today Pete Guess. Pete is the Economic Policy Director at Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families. Welcome, Pete.
Oh, thank you so much. So glad to
Great,
be here. And thanks
great,
to everybody for tuning in.
great. Yeah, we're glad to have you. This is an important conversation. And welcome everyone. This is our Friday noon webinar series. And today we're going to be having a conversation about the upcoming fiscal session that starts in Arkansas on April the 8th. But before we talk about the fiscal session, I do want Pete, tell us a little bit about what you do as the economic policy director for Arkansas Advocates.
Okay, great. Happy to. First, I will say a little bit about Arkansas Advocates because I want
Yep.
to let everybody know that we turn 50 years old next year. So be
Awesome.
looking for celebrations. We want all of you to celebrate with us. And if you don't know Advocates, it obviously started 49 years ago with this simple idea that someone should be representing children and the issues they're facing at the state capitol. And so we serve as an advocacy organization to do just that, to make sure that when the legislature, the governor are considering policies, they're also considering how they can help children. And we do that in a variety of ways, but we really like to bring good policy analysis, good research, good data to the table when we do that. And some of that may be quantitative data. We may do some analysis using numbers. It might be financial numbers. It might be, the numbers of children in poverty, that sort of thing, but also real stories of people that are out there affected, real children that are facing some challenges, as well as their family members that are trying to support them. Yeah, and so my role, I'm economic policy director, as you just heard, and it takes it's sort of like two columns if you were to look at a job description for my position. The first is budget and finance. So I really delve into the state budget. I really think about how the state generates revenue. I really think about what should we be using that revenue for? What are the smart investments we
Right.
can use that revenue for, as we think about, again, making sure young people in our state have what they need to thrive. The other is related, but it's maybe a bigger issue, and that's family economic security. So again, that is what is needed by families in Arkansas to thrive. And some of you may know this. If you look at the number of families that struggle to pay the bills, to make sure that there's enough money for things like food and transportation and housing and medical care and all those sorts of things that aren't luxuries, right? Those are
Right.
requirements.
Necessities.
Yes, about nearly 50% of households really struggle with that in Arkansas. And that's way too many. We all care about that. No one is against alleviating poverty. And so those are the kind of issues that we think about and focus in on.
Right. Right. That's great. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I'm sure our viewers appreciated hearing that overview. The work you all do is phenomenal. It's so necessary, and we appreciate the almost 50 years of
Yeah, right.
and I do want to say this. Your organization and my organization, which my organization is the Arkansas Public Policy Panel and Citizens First Congress
Right.
and Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families, have shared a decades long partnership relationship, and we collaborate on many issues. And so organizations like ours are a key essential part of just helping to create good sound public policy for children, for families, Also, I want to let people know that Pete also serves on our steering committee. Citizens First Congress, which we just say CFC, serves on our steering committee. So Pete is part of the leadership team of our sister organization to the Arkansas Public Policy Panel. So we appreciate that relationship and the partnership, the collaboration, because like I say, in the end, we all want the same thing. And you talk about the family economic security. And and one of the things you said that I think I want to kind of jump into, you said no one disputes wanting to do away with poverty.
Are you going to challenge me on that?
No, I agree.
Okay.
Here's the thing. We all agree. It doesn't matter, and both of our organizations are nonpartisan. I want to say that.
Yep.
Both organizations are nonpartisan. However, when you look at some policies, they don't reflect that everybody wants to do away with poverty. And so I do want to talk. So let's just go ahead and get into the fiscal session that's coming up. It starts April the 8th, and it's going to be important for viewers to understand. We want them to understand the process, and we want viewers to also know they have a voice.
Yep.
That the session is, and of course, we don't hear as much about the fiscal session as we do the general session. The whole state is paying attention, I think, to the general session, but the fiscal session is equally as important because we're talking about prioritizing our budget. Where are our tax dollars going? And so we need to pay attention to the fiscal session. Let's look at the budgets. We need to be communicating with our legislators. But anyway, so let's get into. I want to come back to this poverty issue. Kind of put it on the parking lot, in the parking lot, and let's go talk about the session. So tell our viewers actually what is the fiscal session and what happens in that session.
Yeah, very good. And I will say, if our viewers walk away with something here, I hope it's the answers to these questions. Why should I care about the fiscal session? Then what can I do about it?
There you go. Right.
So you're exactly right. Yes. So Arkansas did not always have a fiscal session. So there are definitely regional differences in the United States about citizen approaches to government. And I'll generalize, but it is fair to say, because of our history, the South has been especially distrustful of government. And that manifests itself in certain ways. Like, we actually elect a lot of constitutional officers, right? But at the federal level, that doesn't happen. We elect the president, and that's it, right? I'm not talking about the legislative branch, right? Obviously, we have representatives, but in the executive branch, we elect the president. At the state level, there are all kinds of folks we elect. Like right now, you might be aware, we're in the Republican candidates for Secretary of State are in a runoff election that I think it's held at the end of this month, right? So there's lots of these officers. Like, I wonder how many of our viewers can explain what the land commissioner actually does. Right. But we elect that position, right? So that's one way it manifests itself. The other way is we like to think of our legislature as non-professional. And by that I don't mean they're amateurs or they're unskilled at what they do. What I mean is we want them to be ordinary citizens that have their ordinary jobs. To them, they're not ordinary, right? They do jobs, whatever that is their fulfilling job. And it might be farmer, it might be businessman, it might be educator, it might be, whatever, attorney. They do all these things in their home communities. And then they come for a very short period of time to the Capitol to do the business of the state, right? That's different than, say, California, where legislators act more like the U.S. Congress, and they're there in session about 8 months of the year. So most of the year, Whereas we really like to think about it as a 3-month deal. They get in, they get out, they get the work done, right? So for the longest time, we had only one session every 2 years. And, that was just the General Assembly. The assembly would come together and pass laws that affect our lives. And that would happen every other year. Well, in 2008, the legislators themselves proposed a constitutional amendment to add a fiscal session, right? And why did they do that? Well, first of all, I'll say, you may know this, that the legislature gets to suggest 3 constitutional amendments every regular session to put before the people.
Right.
So in 2008, one of those suggestions was, let's add a fiscal session. And then it's up to the voters to decide, right? They need a simple majority across the state to say, yes, a fiscal session is a good idea. What was the argument there? Well, government is becoming, more complicated. The government is involved in our lives. The budget is getting larger just because we're growing, just because of inflation, just because things cost more. The budget is getting larger. And we really shouldn't pass a budget for 2 years. We should pass it for 1 year and then come back a year later, check in, make sure everything's going okay, making sure we're still getting the revenue we thought we would get. Because projecting revenue, the amount of money government takes in, is complicated, right? It's probably more art than science.
Right.
And so if you're projecting over 2 years, wouldn't it be great to go back a year later and say, was I right? No, we're not getting as much revenue. We really need to adjust the budget. So it's just additional oversight, and the legislature has responsibility for enacting the budget. So they said it'd be a good idea for us to come back in a shorter session, maybe 3 weeks, and only look at the budget and only pass appropriation bills and the budget. So they brought this to the people. It actually won by, I think, 69%. So a good, healthy majority said, this sounds like a good idea. They passed that. And it is true that when they come in during the fiscal session, which happens in even years, like this is 2026, happens now, whereas the generals in odd years, they can only talk about the budget. In past years, certain legislators have tried to expand that and tried to add, general laws. And the leadership has always said, no, we can't do that. That's not constitutionally mandated by the people. The people said we can only do this fiscal stuff, hence the name fiscal session. And so they really spend their time, reviewing the budget for the current year we're in, which will end June 30th, right? And then looking at how we adjust the budget for the next year, which starts July 1st.
Right.
And not only that, while they do pass the budget for the entire budget, they really spend the majority of their time with what we call the big 6 agencies. And those are the agencies that take up the vast amount of the budget. And if you sat down and put a paper to pencil, you probably would come up with those. Most of our viewers would. It's things like education, which is the largest, DHS, Department of Human Services, second largest, corrections, public safety. We actually think of higher ed different from public education. Like public is, pre-K through 12 with some other wraparound services, but higher ed, health department. I think that's all 6. And so that's what they're getting ready to do, as you mentioned many times, starting April 8th. But they've already started the budget hearings in preparation for that. Right.
So just a side note, the corrections budget, is it the largest budget, state budget?
Or no. Education.
Education is the largest.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. All right. So that overview was good, and I won't. So here's the question. Like I said, we won't. The goal of this is to educate the viewers about the fiscal session. We want to lift up the fiscal session. And I think this is the first time we've actually done a webinar on the fiscal session.
Probably.
Yes, we've been doing this, but we do, we are intentional about making sure we talk about it, let people know it's coming. This is our budget. This isn't legislators' budget. This is our budget. And that we have a right to be there at the Capitol, to be present. And even now in committee, they're in committee talking about this. So, we want to make sure people know this is open to the people. This
Yes.
is the people's government,
That's it.
right? This is our government, and we get a say in that. And of course, generally, we can do that advocacy through our legislators. So
Correct.
we need to be talking to our legislators right now about, you know, financial priorities, right? So
Yep.
let me say this because I want to talk about education priorities. Um, but I do want our listeners and viewers to know, if you have questions for Pete, you can put them, questions or comments, you can put them in wherever you're watching from, whether it's YouTube, I guess, or Facebook. You can put them, and we'll see them. So let's talk about education.
Hmm.
We know a lot of us are concerned about the state of education in Arkansas. We know that through the governor's, she calls them the freedom education accounts. We just call them vouchers. That's another word for them. Uh, they recently released, I don't know if it was a press conference or a press release or whatever, new numbers. Now, I don't know the exact numbers, but here's the issue. The cost for those education freedom accounts continues to grow year after year. And some of us believe, and we do know that 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 is a program for those who already have. Okay, that's just the bottom line. And I don't want to get political. I do want to, and I have to be careful, how I frame that. Um, but the point here, let's talk about the cost to the
Hmm.
budget, because let's just talk about the cost to our
Sure.
budget.
Sure.
So what
Absolutely.
are we looking at?
Yeah.
Because we know it's not fair across the board.
Yep.
People. So let's talk about what those numbers look like and how much is it costing Arkansans in
Right.
taxpayer dollar, mind you.
Yes. Yep. Very good. Okay, so if you don't mind, I'll step back a little bit and talk
Please do.
generally, and then
Yeah, yeah,
narrow in on. You were close. You had it backwards. It's education freedom accounts,
yeah.
EFAs.
What did I say? What? That's all right.
I don't remember.
Freedom.
Maybe you had it. I'm sorry.
It's
Whatever.
education freedom account.
Yes,
Okay.
EFAs. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I said it back.
So right. So I think it would surprise a lot of Arkansans to learn that the state budget is actually more than $30 billion. Right. It's a pretty big price tag. It pales in comparison to some other states, but we are a small state when it comes
Right.
to population, right?
Right.
It doesn't mean we're big geography, and that takes some cost, right, to
Yeah.
manage
Yeah.
a big space. But that's a significant budget. The vast majority of the budget, the biggest contributor to the budget is federal dollars. So the number one source of input into our budget is federal dollars. And forgive me, I have to look up the number here. 34% of our money comes from the federal government. So over a third, right? And then there's some other pretty big chunks like special revenue. So that might be like the gasoline tax, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And by law, it says we're going to have the state tax when you go to the pump. So when you go to the pump and you're paying money, you can't see what the taxes are, but there's federal
Right.
and state tax there. And that's a special tax that says it must go to the Department of Transportation and must be used for roads. And we all enjoy that, right? Because we all
Right.
participate in roads, right? So that's a big chunk. Cash funds is an example. The vast majority of cash funds is tuition dollars that our students are paying at the University of Arkansas and all the other universities, public universities in the
Okay.
state, right? So all those things are earmarked. They have to be used for certain purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't actually have any real discretion over that. So when the federal government says we're going to give you all these Medicaid dollars, we can't say, all right, we're going to now use these Medicaid dollars for education. Right.
Right. Right.
Or we can't use it for roads, or we can't use it for whatever, right? You get my point.
Right.
So really, whenever you hear the governor, the legislature, the media talk about the budget, they're actually talking about the general revenue budget. So
Mhm.
the general revenue budget is the budget that we actually have discretion over. That's when the governor and the legislators get to decide how we spend that money. And it's not an insignificant amount of funds. It certainly is a large amount of funds. It's probably to the tune of around $8 billion, right? So 8 is less than that 30 that we don't have discretion over, but 8
Right.
is a significant amount. So first of all, that's what we're talking about. And
Right.
then off of that 8 billion, there's some stuff we take off automatically. Like we put some of that money into a rainy day fund in case there's an economic downturn, right? Or
Mhm.
natural disasters or something we need to use that money for. We take money right off the top for our constitutional officers. So to run the attorney general's office and other things like that, right?
Right.
So, but by the time all that sort of mandated stuff is taken off the top, what we have now is the current governor's budget request is $6.7 billion. So that you see where I'm whittling it
Yeah,
down. But really, when we're
absolutely.
talking about, this, that 6.7 billion, or let's round it up to $7 billion. That, that's a lot of money when we talk as individuals, we think about that. But that's the money that the governor gets to propose what we do with, and then the legislature gets to decide because they actually pass the laws
Right.
that do that.
Right.
Right. Okay. So this is a long way of saying we're in a current fiscal year. The governor has proposed her budget for the new fiscal year because we have a slogan: the governor proposes, the legislature disposes. So that
Wow.
means the governor gets to propose, the legislature gets to move it through the system and decide and say, let's move on. We're going to enact this budget, right? So she is requesting a 3% increase over the current year budget. Okay, 3%. That's about $200 million, right? So 200 increase. And she is saying that this is a responsible way of not growing government. We need to be fiscally responsible to taxpayer dollars. And that's fine. And a
Yeah.
lot of our viewers may agree with that, right? And responsible
Well,
budgeting is an important thing.
being physically responsible is a good thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But you may also say, well, there's all these programs we really haven't invested in that we
Right.
really
And that's
should.
my concern. And that's what I want
Yes,
to talk about
yes, we
because
can talk more about
of
that.
this
Yep.
discretionary money. There are
Yes.
programs that need to be funded, and that's where we
Right,
need
right,
to kick in our advocacy is for
right,
those
right.
programs. Yeah.
Yeah, but here's what I want to say. So out of that 200 million, I'm rounding up. It's actually
Okay. Sure.
195 million, rounding up 200.
Right, right, right.
63% of that increased request is all going to EFAs.
Tell them what EFAs
Okay.
are. So
Sorry, the education freedom accounts.
right, right.
And
That's
it's
what I
okay.
was
It's
talking
okay.
about.
And we call them vouchers as well. It's okay to
Yeah,
call
they
them
are
vouchers.
vouchers. Let's call them what they are. Yeah.
Yeah. The important thing to understand, these are public dollars, taxpayer
Right.
dollars. They're coming in as general revenue
Uh-huh.
from the taxpayers, and they are going to families to help them pay for the tuition at private school or help them cover the cost of homeschooling.
Right.
Okay. And we're not here to really talk about philosophically whether we
Right,
agree with
right,
that
right.
policy or not, right? You asked me
Exactly.
the
We just
fiscal
want to
question,
keep it
which
right,
is super important, right? So
right.
my point is 2/3 of the budget increase is nothing but EFAs.
Mhm.
Another 27% goes to pay raises, mostly in public safety and corrections. So last year, the legislature approved a new pay classification plan for state government officials. And
Mhm.
I'll be the first to argue, because I've studied this a little bit, that state government officials are underpaid. Most people agree with that. Most people agree that we need to raise salaries for government officials,
Yeah.
government employees. These are not elected officials, right? These
Right,
are the
right.
people that are working in the
Exactly.
departments, right?
Totally
Keeping
agree.
us safe and helping us administer healthcare and all that
Absolutely.
stuff, right?
Absolutely.
And so paying them more, we kind of most people would agree with that. Not
Right.
everybody, but a lot of people would. And obviously, the legislature approved the new pay classification plan. So that this 27% of that 200 million is going to that. And so my point is that's going to cost us money. So that's another thing that takes that part of the 200 million requested increase. That leaves 10% for everything else.
Mhm.
And 6 million is going to higher ed simply because we have a higher ed funding formula that says this is what we need to do. And that's good for higher ed. And I'm a big, as you know, I've had a career in higher education. I'm a big proponent of investing in higher education.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the most important tools for breaking the poverty cycle, is increasing access for our young people, right? But there's really no investment in anything else. And I should step back and say, all our viewers know this because they go to the grocery store and they fill up their gasoline tank on their car.
Yep.
Inflation has really been hurting us.
Yeah.
So inflation is finally starting to go down, right? Over the past year, it's ranged on, comparing month to the 12 months before, it's ranged from 2.4% to 3%. Which means you're paying 3% more for the same goods, right? Whether that's at the grocery store or whatever.
Did you say inflation is going down?
It is going down. I mean,
We're not feeling it going down.
No, I know. We haven't seen it really hit, but objective measures, it is going down from a high of like 5 point something, right?
Okay.
Or almost nearly 6%. So it still needs to go down further. It's still out of control. It's still affecting families.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I'm feeling.
We need it to be lower. But here's my point. Right. It's been between 2.4 and 3%.
Okay.
Right. And if you're not getting a pay raise that matches that, you're 2 to 3% poorer, essentially.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. But my point is, if inflation's been up that much, and we're only increasing the budget by the same amount of inflation, we're not investing. We're keeping it level because as it's more expensive for us to fill the gas tank, it's more expensive for government to fill the gas tank, both the actual gas tank, on a government vehicle, but also the figurative. Like it's more expensive to do business as government. Right. So if you had a 3% raise across all departments, you'd be keeping up inflation. But we're not doing that. Right. Most of the investment is going to education freedom accounts or public school vouchers for private school, or to these pay increases. And again, we're not here to argue policy. We're just here to say that means there really isn't strategic investment in anything else.
Right. And that's problematic. That's problematic. Let me pause here. We have a question from Donna, one of our viewers, Donna. She said, is the proposed budget on argov.com for citizens to review? So the question is, where is this proposed budget for citizens to look at? Where can they find it?
Yeah, I'll say this. One thing that is great about the state of Arkansas is they are very transparent on all these things. That doesn't mean it's always easy to find the information, but they do try hard. And to your point earlier, all these hearings are public. You can go and sit and listen to the debate about budget items. Probably most of the viewers here are like trying to squeeze in this webinar during their lunch break and are really busy people. So I get that. They do record everything. You can go back and watch them later. Somebody could say something to you and you could fast forward to the section you want. The best way to do that is through the Arkansas legislature's website. Right. And it's a little complicated. It's artleg something. But if you just Google Arkansas legislature, you'll get there. Right. And then there's a tab at the top that says budget, and you can see the governor's proposed budget from doing that.
Okay, great. So that is, and I should have had that that website, but I didn't. But like you said, like Pete said, you all just Google the Arkansas State Legislature. And that website it's really a good website, and it is pretty user friendly. It's pretty user friendly. And so we use it all the time. So if you just Google it, go there, and you can find the budget is not easy to read.
Yeah, for sure.
It is not. It is very complicated. So,
and let me say this: the landing page actually is a calendar of upcoming budget hearings. Yes. And that's where you can find the agenda, related documents, any documents they're talking about appear there. And that's where you can find past recordings as well, or tune in live. You can actually all hearings, and not just budget hearings, right?
Right.
But,
all hearings.
If you wanted to go to the education committee's hearing, you can. Those are broadcast live. You can listen in live as well. So it is a little tricky to get to past meetings because it only shows the upcoming events. But at the
Right.
very top, there's a little link that says this month that expands it, and then you can put in the
Mhm.
dates, and you can select any dates you want, and you can see past meetings and get to
Right.
past documents and watch the hearings and that sort of thing. This is a the nerds of like government watching love like doing this stuff.
Right.
I realize most people are busy people,
Exactly.
but tune into the stuff that you're especially interested
Right.
in.
But we work in this, so
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I
we're
mean,
kind of geeked out. So
yes, that's right. That's right.
okay, Heather just put it on the screen.
Oh,
So
awesome. Thank you.
thank you for that, Heather. So there's
Yeah.
there's where you can go
Right.
directly.
And if
Uh,
you take off the budget part, you get to just the home landing page,
the
right?
home landing
Yeah,
page. And like I
that's right.
said, it's a great tool that we have. It keeps us connected because we cannot always be at the Capitol and committee hearings,
Yes.
but we can
Yes.
sit here in our office and watch them and take away what we need to take away. So those are great. So let
Yeah.
me, Pete, I do want to reiterate the general revenue budget because a lot of times that's what I'm referencing because we know the other parts are already earmarked for certain things.
Right.
But
Right.
so I do have a question for clarity because you said our general revenue budget is about $8 billion,
Yes.
and that's annually, right?
Yes. I mean, it goes up a little bit every year, but yes.
Right. But on average,
Yeah.
just right now,
Yes.
it's about $8
Mhm.
billion.
Yeah.
So of the $8 billion, the governor gets to direct 6.7 billion. Is that right? Or is that just her request?
Um, that is that is right. So what she does is, there's something called the Department of Finance and
Yeah,
Administration.
the
They
FDA.
are responsible, and they have really smart people there,
Oh
economists
yeah.
that
Oh yeah.
are responsible for projecting, forecasting how much revenue we will get. So that's
Right.
where they end up with, okay, from sales tax and income tax and luxury tax and insurance tax. Those are the big sources. And if we
Yeah.
want to delve into those, we can. But when we get those in, we can project based on history, based on where we think the U.S. economy is going. Because
Mhm.
obviously, if the economy is not going well, people aren't buying things. We do
Right.
not get sales tax, right?
Right.
But they project that based on lots of factors within the state and without the state. They project all that, and so they come to the governor and the legislature and say, we project $9 billion in revenue. The governor says, okay, we're obligated to take off the top some of these things I mentioned before.
Mhm.
The Educational Adequacy Fund, we're obligated
Okay.
to take that off the top. We're obligated to take off money for the constitutional officers. We
Right.
take off, I think it's $50 million for the Department of Transportation. So
Okay.
all of that stuff adds up to, I don't have the math right in front of me. Let's say about $1.5 billion that comes right off
Mhm.
the top. So that's
Right.
not discretionary either.
Okay.
What's left is what she gets to propose, and she could propose all of it. Let's use all of it, or she could say, let's propose most of it and leave a little bit in what we call surplus.
Surplus.
And that's typically what happens. And so there's a modest surplus in this proposal. But she does say of the general revenue that's not already obligated, it's my job to suggest to the legislature how we spend that money. And that's how she came up with the 6.7 billion.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So I do want to say for the record, we are not happy about the 63% of those
Yeah.
those dollars
Yeah.
going to EFAs, which are
Yeah.
education freedom accounts.
Right.
We are not happy about that because here's what that is, and we want the viewers to know and understand. We've said it; those are taxpayer dollars going to private vouchers, or vouchers for private school, private and homeschool. So
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
what it is. And so
And again, there may be some viewers there, even viewers here that are like, yeah, I take that voucher. It's
yeah,
a good thing.
I'm
Right.
sure,
Right.
I'm sure.
And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
there's always room for legitimate policy discussion about
Right,
these.
right,
I
right.
think there are several problems with it that you've hinted around to. One is they're just not equitable.
Right.
Okay. Um,
That's my big
right.
thing. They're
Right.
not equitable. Yeah.
Right. And so here's the thing. And, as an academic, I've actually studied this
Hmm.
academically. Right. And
Okay.
now I get to see where it actually hits, where the rubber hits the road. Right.
Right. Right.
So in the 1970s, this idea of public choice became really popular. There were a lot of scholars in my field who said, government needs to run more like government. We actually need competition. Competition makes everything better. And, and therefore we should have this competition. And there was an offshoot of that that said we should have competition among schools. And so let's encourage, sort of this use of public money in private schools, and they would make public schools better and all of that. First of all, there's not ever compelling evidence that that has actually played out that way. But here's the real problem in my mind, with public choice theory. It works theoretically, but it only works if everybody really has a choice.
Right.
Right. But all parents in Arkansas don't have the choice. And
Right.
in your mind, you might be thinking, okay, there are definitely parts in rural Arkansas where there just aren't viable alternatives for the public school. There just might not be private school. And I can't homeschool my child because, maybe I'm a single parent and I'm working two jobs, and, homeschooling's off the table.
Hmm.
There aren't private schools nearby. But, even if there are private schools nearby, there may not be the ability of that family to enroll that student and make sure that student can participate in that private school. What do I mean by that? Well, transportation is a huge issue.
Hmm.
So we have big, wide open spaces in Arkansas. Arkansas is the natural state. It's beautiful. I love spending time in the outdoors in Arkansas, but that also means there's big spaces between people, right?
Right.
Or sparse population. We don't have density in a lot of places. So it
Right.
may be that, okay, to get my kid to the private school, it's going to spend 30 minutes in the car one way. Well, again, that I might not be able to afford that. I maybe am not able to take the time off from work to be able to do that. And
Mhm.
obviously, there are plenty of citizens in Arkansas that don't have access to transportation, which is a problem in all kinds of levels. So it doesn't work for everyone. Is a major problem. The other problem that's often pointed out is, depending on what year you're looking at, what data you're looking at, this is kind of hard to track down, but something like 82% of recipients have not actually, recipients of the vouchers have not ever been in a public school.
Okay.
So it was sold to Arkansans as this will really help folks who, their child is like, the public school doesn't work for them. And it may be a D or F school, right? It's rated D
Hmm.
or F, or it may be it doesn't have the kind of services. My kid's not responding to this kind of learning environment. As it's panning out, most parents did not have that wasn't the situation,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
There
That
are
wasn't at
some there
all.
are some which we call switchers. They
Yeah.
switch from public school to private or homeschool, but the vast majority were already in private school, or
Exactly.
kindergartners that are going to private school, right? And
Exactly.
so in that case, and you probably have run across people like this that are like, yeah, the government just gave me a $14,000 raise because,
Uh-huh.
I had two kids in private school,
Yep.
and now I'm getting 14, because two kids, they're about
Yeah.
7,000. The voucher is
Right.
about 7,000
Right.
each. Right.
Right.
And so now I have 14,000 more dollars.
Yeah.
Right. And
And
it feels like a raise.
those are wealthy families.
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
necessarily say wealthy, but they
Right.
are
I mean,
families
there's,
that.
yeah, there certainly are families who have made that commitment to private schooling their kids, and
Right.
as
Right.
being a parent, I would never second guess that decision.
Yeah. 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 That's their
I
decision.
do
Yeah.
believe in parent empowerment
Parent
and
choice.
deciding that, right, right,
Yeah, and
but it's
also
not
for the
this.
record, I support parents. I mean, whatever they
Yes,
want to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
The issue
It,
is the taxpayer
yeah,
dollars going to
that's not
fund
the
it.
same thing
That's
as
the
saying
issue.
we should
Yeah,
use the
yeah,
money for
yeah,
that, right?
yeah.
And there
Exactly.
are other states, by the way. Unfortunately, the voucher movement is growing across the country, but
Uh-huh.
there are other states that have income limits on vouchers that say, if you make above a certain amount, you don't qualify for the voucher. Or maybe it's a phase system. Like if you make a certain amount, you only get 1/4 of the voucher,
Yeah.
and then you get 1/2 of the voucher. And then folks who really are at the lower end of the spectrum on earnings, on household income,
Yeah.
get the whole voucher, right?
Right.
And actually, Arkansas Advocates supported legislation
Yeah.
in the last legislative session to do that. And I
And that
actually
Yeah,
yeah,
and Pete, a system like that would move us toward being more equitable in the
that's right.
process. It
That's
would
right.
make it more equitable because
That's
right
right.
now it is not. There's no. It's not. It's not.
Yeah. And a common response might be, well, why should I pay, my local, property taxes to support schools when my kids aren't there? Most people, when you really talk to them and ask about them, even if they never had children, understand the value of quality public schools.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's why we have retirees, right? Who not only are their kids well out of public school, their grandkids are well out of
Yeah.
public school,
Yeah.
right? And they're like, you know what? Little Rock should have really vibrant public schools because
Absolutely.
that's so important for a strong community. It's so important for economic development. It's
is.
so important for a vibrant life
Absolutely.
of a community, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's why a lot of people, like I said, who choose never have kids still support the idea of taxes going to support public education.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's shift just a little bit because I want to talk about, I want the viewers to hear your points on because there's so many worthy programs that are not receiving funding that benefit children, of course, and their families. So let's just talk about some of those priorities.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, panelist prerogative here, I'm going to say just one more word about vouchers because
sure, absolutely.
I know that our viewers are super interested in what this is really costing us, right?
Right, absolutely.
So the current fiscal year, basically overlaps an academic year. We can think of it the same, right? Because we think of middle of summer as a switchover point, right? So the legislature at the last general session approved a budget for the current fiscal year of $187 million for vouchers. Okay. The governor had proposed that amount and then said, just in case they're more popular than that, I'm going to set aside another $90 million. And what we call a set aside, that's a technical term, budgeting term that says this is actually not in the budget. So we've been talking about the general revenue budget. This is outside the budget, but in case we need it, we can tap into it. It's one-time funding. It comes from basically surplus left over from previous years. So one-time funding of $90 million, right? And when I testified in behalf of that bill, I said, we need to put income limits in. And the Secretary of Education said, he sat actually right next to me and testified against the bill and said, I don't understand what problem this is trying to create. There's plenty of money that the legislature approved to do this. I said, there's no way even that additional 90 is going to be enough.
That's right.
And it's both makes me happy to say I told you so, but also very disappointed, right? Because we blew right through that.
That's right.
Yep. And fairly recently, a few months ago, the legislature, the secretary had to come back to the legislature and a special committee that can release these one-time funding and say, we need another 32 million.
I remember. I watched.
Right. And so what happened now is the governor's new budget request said, okay, well, we need to incorporate that 90 million set aside plus that 32 million set aside. So that increase, that 63% that you said we're not happy with, right?
Right.
That's that set aside from the previous year of 122 million. If you add that 90 plus 32, right?
Right.
And that's the new budget, right? So essentially, she's asking for a budget that funds it at the level we're at right now of 44,000 students. That's akin to saying there's going to be zero growth. We know that's not true. Just if
Right.
we only have first-time kindergartners enter, we know there's going to be growth.
Right.
And the retention rate is pretty high. It's 90%, something like that. That means students that have taken EFA are taking the EFA the next year, right? It's pretty
Okay.
high.
Right.
And so that 309 is the budget line item in the budget. If you take the 187 from the current year, add in that 122, you get to 309. That's what we're paying this year. So she's only requesting sort of the status quo or flat budget. But then she said, well, in case there's demand, we'll put another 70 million in a set aside, right? So that gets us to 379. You might hear some legislators say 380. That's not an insignificant amount, again, of taxpayer money. But here's the thing that I'm also upset about as a budget. I mean, with all that I've become kind of an expert on budgeting, right?
Yeah, you are.
With all humility, I'll say that.
Right.
This is not best practice for budgeting, because what she's essentially doing is saying any growth will fund out of one-time money, and then we'll go back to the legislature afterwards and say, now we need to put this into the budget. And that's taking the sort of deliberation, the conversation out of the hands of the legislature, because it makes it really politically difficult for them to go back and say, no, we never agreed to this. We're now going to take away that 70 million and keep it at 309, which means they would have to kick people off of vouchers.
Right.
And then they start hearing from their constituents and say, why did you give me the voucher 1 year? So this is kind of a budget exercise that puts the more power than should be by our Constitution in the hand of the Secretary of Education and the governor to say, we'll fund any growth out of one-time funding, and then sort of force the legislature politically to come backfill.
And that's very intentional on their part and very strategic.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, if you're not happy about this, people listening, I think you should go and say, hey, I elected you, my representative and my senator, and I don't like this process. I think you should at least be honest with this and have the conversation during budget hearings about, is it really going to go to 380 and are we really happy with that?
Right.
And maybe they are, right? But they should at least have a public discourse about that. They should take public testimony about that, right?
And that's what needs to happen. And I hope people that are listening will take heed to that and take heed to that and contact your legislators and because we really need some advocacy. We really need advocacy. We need a uproar. We need an uproar. We need an uproar behind this because it's just not a fair process. It's just not.
Right.
Yeah. It's not.
And I will say this, legislators do listen to their constituents.
They do. Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely. So the more voices they hear on this, that's a very positive thing. Exactly. And you might say, well, hey, my representative has voted for vouchers many, many times, voted for the LEARNS Act. That's fine. But we are really beginning to hear more and more concern among legislators, like how expensive is this really going to get us?
Right.
Right. Are we going to be spending $1 billion?
Right.
And by the way, I will say that, I have two colleagues in my office in Arkansas Advocates that really do work on educational policy and finance. Yeah. And together we're all trying to think through how we really communicate this. Right. So be looking for more information out of us on projections on growth and cost and that sort of thing. Because right now I'm skeptical that 70 million, even that 70 million is going to be enough in the coming year.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like I said, it's constantly growing. And so, once you all get that piece together, our organizations work together in collaboration. So we will definitely get the messaging out because when we go to our legislators, we want to have the right message and we want to be consistent in what, we're saying, what the advocacy is. And so, but it's going to be so important that legislators hear from their constituents.
Right, absolutely.
They do pay attention, and it takes people like us for them, to hear our voice.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And there's only so much that the two of us can do.
Right.
As right. They really They really, and I will say we have great conversations with legislators all the
Yeah, yeah,
time,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it really is the
It's the
constituents,
constituents, exactly.
not the advocates, right?
Not the
I mean,
advocates. It's the
right. By
constituents who
advocates, I
use
mean
their
the professionals.
advocacy.
Yes,
Right,
that's
right,
exactly right. That's
right,
right.
right.
That's the
And
distinction.
that's what
Yeah,
I was
absolutely.
trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
want to hear
absolutely.
from their constituents in their districts. Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
So because we can go have a conversation with a legislator and but when they hear from their constituents, uh,
Yes.
they're
Yeah,
going to pay attention. So, and we want people to do that. And we talk about advocacy and using your voice and organizing. We talk about that. And so,
that's right. That's right.
so just as a reminder, the physical session begins on April the 8th. And is it just 1 week?
No,
How long is it?
they usually say about 30 days,
30
counting
days.
weekends.
Okay.
They
I mean,
try to
a month. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
They try to do in 3 weeks, but it usually is about 4 weeks.
About a
That's
month.
right. That's
Okay.
right. Yep,
Okay. Yeah,
exactly
yeah,
right.
yeah. Okay.
So I know we're getting short on time. Let me
We
say,
are, and I
get
don't
back
see,
to it.
yeah, I don't see any other questions. And like I said, it's
Okay.
about time to wrap it up. Okay, okay. Bill asked one question. Can you see it? Can you see the
Yeah,
question?
I can.
Okay, and I think viewers
Yeah.
can see the question. It says, how much is dedicated to the new prison in the budget? How much are they increasing the budget for crime prevention and diversity programs to increase public safety with the new prison?
Yeah.
You have any numbers on the prison budget? I can say it's too
Yes.
much.
Yeah. So
I don't. Yeah.
there's lots of disagreement within the Republicans
Mhm.
in the
Right.
legislature about the budget, about the prison.
About the prison. Yeah.
And so there's very little chatter about it now. So there's
Right.
no budget requests at the moment for the new prison.
Yeah.
And the new prison is a lot. I forget the latest numbers. I think it was as much
I
as
can't
80
remember.
million, 800 million.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, what nobody's talking about, and that's sort of one-time money,
Yeah.
right? Because that's what we call capital expenditure to build a prison. But what nobody's talking about is how much it actually costs to run that prison.
Maintain it. Right.
And
Right.
I did some really quick calculations on this, and it's hard to do as an outsider looking in. I'm not an expert on running prisons,
Right.
but I
Right.
compared some other states, and I think it's probably the tune of $30 million a year.
Wow.
Right? That's not an insignificant amount of money.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And so that's something we need to talk about as well. I think what I'm
Right.
hearing from legislators is this is not going to come up during the fiscal session. We'll
Right.
see. We need to be prepared, if you care about that issue, again, to advocate against it.
Mhm.
Right? For
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me say a more general word on
Okay.
investments. Yeah. So yeah.
Oh yeah. That neat. Yes. Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah. So let me start with this. We're on this sort of relentless march to zero income tax in Arkansas, and a lot of other states are in this fight to do this. Over the
Right.
past 10 years, we've reduced the income tax almost always for the highest earners, right?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
for everybody, almost always for the highest earners. And so many times that we have given away $2 billion annually. I'm not talking about a cumulative 2 billion. I mean,
Yeah.
we would have 2 billion more every year in revenue. So we might legitimately argue some of that could have gone back in income tax, but some of it could have been used for investments.
Right.
But think about all the stuff we could do with $2 billion. How many children we
Mhm.
could lift out of poverty,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so there's continuing chatter about doing it. I don't think income tax reduction proposal is going to happen during the fiscal session, but I
Mhm.
think the governor is going to call back the legislature in special session, probably
Oh,
as early as May, maybe as early as May or even June.
of this year?
Yes, that's the chatter I hear. So we
Mhm.
all need to be motivated to do that because
Yeah.
there's not much
Oh, yeah.
surplus left in the budget, and we need to use
Right.
that for other things. So what are some of those things? Healthcare, a big deal about it.
Yeah. That was number one on my list, healthcare.
We are now the only state in the country that has not extended postpartum Medicaid to 12 months.
Yep.
Only state, a state with one of the highest maternal mortality rates.
Doesn't
Right?
make sense.
This is nonsense. I mean, you can sit objectively and say we should do this. It also will only cost us about $3 million based on DFNA's, the Department of Finance and Administration's own projections, because the federal government puts in the vast percentage of that money.
Yeah, that's
Right.
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 That's right.
The response to why aren't we doing this? The official executive response has been, well, there are other systems for doing that. Well, they're not.
They're not.
The latest
You're
research
correct.
has shown an alarming number of women who, with about 3 months after giving birth, have lost their medical coverage, their health insurance, which means as the health of the mom goes, the health of the baby goes, right? So you're getting the opposite of a 2-for-1. You're losing 2 for 1, right? By not protecting the mother, right? So that's a big thing. Wraparound school services, really important. Like, first of all, we're really pleased to see universal free breakfast in public schools. Let's do lunch, right?
Let's do lunch.
How about fully funding universal pre-K?
Yeah, there you go.
Right. How about summer
and after school?
Yeah, summer and after school. These sort of wraparound services that, again, the science shows are so very important to the development. And hey, we were all babies once. We were all young people. Babies are stinking cute, right? People love babies. Let's invest in them.
Let's invest in them. Let's take care of them.
The return in that investment comes back, right?
It does,
because they live lives of fulfillment, right? So that's just a few examples.
And then they go to those public schools that are vibrant, because we have enough funds that we could better fund. Those public schools.
Right.
And I have to say this, and I'm not going to get into it. Our time is short, but we're working on a ballot measure right now, for our kids, and you all can go to the website. We are working on the ballot measure. There it is right there. Check out www.forourkids.org and become a part of this process, volunteer, because we are working on some of these very things that you just talked about, and it all is going to benefit our kids, okay? Our schools, our communities, okay? And we're trying to get these things in the Constitution to guarantee the funding for pre-K, 3 and 4-year-olds, the wraparound services, the summer and after school, all of those things. So I just had to throw that in there since you mentioned. So we're definitely fighting the good fight. So
and let me say one quick thing, because my colleagues would be upset if I didn't.
Yeah, please do.
This is a horrible time to think about tax cuts, because the federal government is putting a lot more financial demands on states. One clear example is President Trump has said many times that he wants the federal government to get out of disaster relief assistance. You may have heard of FEMA, right? This organization that helps with that. We have natural disasters here. We've had some pretty bad tornadoes recently. We've had flooding. The state does not have money to do this. So if this really happens, we're going to have to come up with the money. Why would you give away revenue? That would be like, I'm not going to work at this job anymore and take in this revenue because, I know the future is uncertain. The economic future is uncertain, but my family doesn't really need that revenue. We need that revenue as a state. And here's a clear example that we know is already happening. Your viewers probably know about SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Used to be called food stamps. Very important in Arkansas. One of the hungriest. I think we have the #1 hunger rate in the country.
I think so.
The faith community, the food banks, they do a wonderful job. But for every meal they provide, SNAP provides 9. They just can't make up that difference, and they're the first to say that we don't have the ability to do that. The federal government is putting more responsibility for paying for SNAP on the state government. And it's complicated. I don't want to go into the details, but we know in this coming year, it's an additional 18 million. We know it's going to go much more than that in future years. So even if we have a modest surplus, part of that is going to be taken up by paying for SNAP. And we have to pay for SNAP or we lose SNAP altogether. And that means we have so many hungry people. So that's just a really good example of thinking in terms of investing in people and not tax cuts that so far have been primarily for the
Mhm.
highest earners.
And people, this is why we do not need tax cuts.
Yep,
This
that's
is
exactly
why,
right.
because
So
money
help us with that
help
fight.
us
Yeah,
exactly
yeah,
help us with that
yep,
fight, because instead of those tax cuts, that revenue could be going into these programs that are vital to sustaining people's daily lives. It's
right,
that serious. It is
right.
that serious. And so it's so important. Man, we are out of time. Pete, this has
Yeah,
been phenomenal. Now I'm gonna say
great.
this. I think we need to circle back after the session,
Uh-huh.
after the fiscal session, because uh, like I said when we started, this is the first time that I can remember, and I've been here 11 years, that I can remember us having a webinar on the fiscal session. I wanted
Hmm.
to do it because I know how important it is. And we want to lift it up. We want to promote this awareness, lift it up, talk about why it's so important, and get people actively involved. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we need to circle back.
Uh-huh.
Um, like
Especially if there's a special session.
yeah, if there's going to be a
Let's do it.
special session,
Yep.
because I hadn't heard that particular chatter,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so we definitely need to circle back, because Lord knows who knows
Right,
in
right,
special
right.
session. So you
Yeah,
keep your ear to the ground, and you keep
I
me
will for
posted,
sure.
and we'll
Yeah,
keep our community here. We'll keep them posted. So
yeah,
thank you
absolutely.
again so much. Again, everybody, this is Pete Guest, who is the Economic Policy Director at Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families. I'm Kamara Seals, Policy Director here at the Arkansas Public Policy Panel. And it has been a delight to have this conversation. And we just look forward to having another conversation. So thank you so
Yeah.
much, Pete. Thank you all for joining in and listening. Do you have any final comments you want to?
No, I just say get involved, right?
That's it. Get
This
involved.
is your government belongs to you. Yep.
Exactly. And for
Yep.
those of you who are not registered, y'all get registered and vote. Get registered and vote. We're gonna do it. We're gonna talk more about that. But you all, it is so critical. All right, guys. I won't get on my vote soapbox, but thank you all so much for joining us, and you all have a great weekend.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.